皆さん、こんにちは。今回はProBox TV でパンチ力のある選手について話していたので、その内容を翻訳しました。内容が少し長めですが、概要欄にタイムスタンプを載せているので、気になる部分からご覧いただけます。それでは、お楽しみください。
Today, it's a little different. We're talking about the hardest punchers currently in boxing. We have a bunch of names. We're going to say basically where we put them on our list. Well, I got the experts to help me break it down. Jimmy Smith in studio. Joining us via remote is, of course, the champs. Chris Algieri, Paulie Malignaggi, also the coach, Teddy Atlas. Can't wait to get their opinions about this list. We'll start off, gentlemen, with Gervonta Davis. Of course, he has 30 wins, 28 by knockout. What do you think of him, Chris, in terms of where he belongs on your list, your top five? Where would you put him?
Jimmy, I'm glad we're doing the ranking show this way.
Yeah.
Because punching and KOs are really hard to compare, and that's something that I've spoken to so many fighters. Like, oh, who hit harder? Oh, and people are always surprised. There's different kinds of punchers. When it comes to Gervonta Davis, I'm also very happy that Teddy's with us today because he's going to have some fantastic insight. Speaking about dealing with punchers, this guy's dealt with some of the best punchers in history. But when you talk about Gervonta Davis, man, I'm very high on him in terms of power puncher and his, obviously because of his knockout percentage. His knock on this list is going to be his competition. He has not fought the same level of the other guys that we have on this list, but his ability to finish fights, his ability to set up the knockout shot is one of the best in the world. I always say that. He's just waiting. He's finding out that time. The name Tank is such a good name for him because he's positioning himself and setting up to blast off with that artillery, because in that left hand, man, that thing is poison. That Frank Martin knockout was very impressive. He's got so many fantastic highlight reel knockouts. And it's one of those things when you're watching him fight, it's not so much if he's going to knock him out, it's when. Because you're just waiting for it, and that's the way that he fights as well. Also, the fact that he believes in his power so much, he's willing to fall behind. I love that. I think it makes it more exciting. But in terms of the rest of this list, I'm going to have him towards the bottom based on the opposition that he's fought thus far.
Now, I'm very curious about that. Teddy, since Chris mentioned you, what do you think of the opposition? When we talk about heavyweight punchers, a lot of people talk about Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson exists in an era that didn't have a lot of great heavyweights in it. Does the competition mean a lot to you when you're talking about power and the ability to land it?
Yeah, I mean, you have to. You have to equate in, who they are beating, and in this case, particularly who they're knocking out. You have to equate that in. Look, I drove people crazy for all the years I was calling all the fights on ESPN. People would come in, the guy's 20-0, the guy's 15-0, the guy's 40-0, the guy's 50-0, whatever, 100-0. And I say, what does it mean? Look at the 100 guys that he beat. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. And it's the same thing here. It's not just about knockouts, it's about who you're knocking out. Because I've seen it. I've seen it where guys have all the knockouts in the world, and then all of a sudden they step up in level, and then not devastating the way they were before with that kind of power. One of the reasons, because it becomes then a situation of delivery system, of technique, of expertise in those areas, that you can land the power, that you can deliver it, in an accurate way, in a obviously efficient, effective way. And then again, the quality of the chins you're hitting, where we usually don't talk about the quality of chins, but again, the ilk, the level of people that they're up against, it does matter, who's being hit, who's being beat. There's no doubt about it. I differ with Chris just a little bit. I very rarely differ with Chris or Paulie about anything, but I do think that Gervonta's resume is up to par. I look at the guys that, everyone's got the guys on their list that obviously are on the list to fatten the record and, to indulge the audience, to indulge the promoters, the networks, to elicit support from them, to get people excited, all of that, the promotional part of it. But I think he's knocked out some really good fighters. And I also feel that at the end of the day, it's the eye test. Yeah, it's everything that Chris touched on, everything I said. It's about who you're hitting. But it's also, you can see a guy. I don't want to say you can hear it, but the sound of punches sound different. And the eye test tells it. punches are born. They're not made. And the guys that are born with that kind of power, it stands out. It catches your eye. It passes that test. And for me, Gervonta, he's one of those guys. You know, he's just explosive. And Chris is right. You can differentiate the kind of punch. Some of those kind of ponderous punches, like getting hit with a club. Other guys are the explosive ones where they just take the lights right out. Other guys are the ones who you know, just dull your senses and they beat you into oblivion, so to speak. I mean, George Foreman type puncher was different than a Mike Tyson type puncher.
ジョージ・フォアマンは1968年メキシコシティオリンピックのヘビー級金メダリストで、プロでも世界ヘビー級王者となった伝説的な選手です。持ち前の強打は、象をも倒すと言われるほどの破壊力を誇りました。1973年にジョー・フレイジャーを2ラウンドで圧倒し、世界ヘビー級タイトルを獲得します。しかし、翌年1974年にモハメド・アリに敗れ、これがプロ41戦目で初黒星となります。その後、1977年、28歳で一度引退しますが、10年後の1987年、38歳で現役復帰を果たします。復帰後は着実にキャリアを積み重ね、1994年、19歳年下のマイケル・ヌーアと WBA 及び IBF 世界ヘビー級タイトルをかけて戦い、見事 KO 勝ちを収めました。この勝利で、モハメド・アリに奪われた栄光を20年越しに取り戻すことに成功しました。また、45歳9ヶ月でのタイトル獲得は、当時の最年長王座獲得記録でしたが、その後バーナード・ホプキンスが2011年、46歳4ヶ月で WBC 世界ライトヘビー級タイトルを獲得し、この記録を更新しています。
Tyson had that snap, that explosion, bang, you're out. George Foreman hit it again. It was like getting hit with a club wrapped up in a towel, where, you know, you didn't know where you were. And then, obviously, you weren't there anymore. So there are different forms of power. I just look at a Gervonta as that born power. That not, again, it just brings me to that saying, punches are born, they're not made. The guy hits you, it explodes.
Paulie, what's your thought on
Teddy,
Gervonta Davis?
Wait,
yeah,
real cool. And
no,
Teddy, it was exactly why I was excited that you were here on this show today. The way that you were to explain that in the way that only you can do. So I appreciate you so much. But in terms of how I meant about Gervonta Davis and his competition, I agree with you that, you know, I just want to make sure I don't get killed in the comments here. I think it's just, compared to who else we're talking about, it's tough because we're talking about him first. But in terms of competition of everyone else that we're talking about, I'm a big Gervonta Davis guy. I always have been. But sorry, Jam, go ahead. I just want to get in there.
Hey, listen, I appreciate you guys. I just want to say that. Go ahead.
Paulie, on
I'm
your
the guy
list.
that doesn't care about the. I do agree with Teddy in the fact that he has that snap, impressive power when he lands. But I also agree with Chris on the fact that his competition is not where it should be. We brought up Mike Tyson, and we say, oh, Mike Tyson, there weren't guys in his era that were up to par, so to speak, whatever. Mike Tyson fought them all, so we found out they weren't up to par, you know, because he knocked every single one of them out, right? Or at least he beat them, right, in his era. And he was about to fight Holyfield. He went to jail, so he wasn't trying to avoid the undisputed cruiserweight champion who had just come up to heavyweight either. He went to chase those fights, and he was in his early 20s the whole time. Positive or negative as it may be, that's a guy that chased the fight. There are guys that chase those kind of fights. I think Gervonta Davis has power. You'd be moronic to think he doesn't. But where he lands on this list is more so, I agree with Chris, where the level of competition. I was working at Showtime when Jose Pedraza was struggling and saying in the fighter meetings he was staying at 130 pounds just because he had the IBF title.
ファイターミーティングはメディアやファン向けの公開イベントではなく、主に解説者、コーチ、プロモーターが集まり、試合の戦略や重要なポイントを確認する場です。特に解説者が選手と個別に話し、当日の解説に必要な情報や選手の状態を把握するために行われることが多いです。一方で、試合前の記者会見はメディア向けに開催され、選手やコーチが記者の質問に答える場です。ここでは、試合に対する意気込みや見どころが発表され、メディアを通じて試合を盛り上げる目的もあります。多くのメディアが参加し、 一般ファンにも広く情報が届けられます。
He actually probably lost the IBF title before he fought Gervonta Davis when he fought Edna Cherry, and Edna Cherry got robbed. So the title fight with Gervonta fought Pedraza has a little bit of stain on it because you beat a good fighter and you beat a fighter who actually went up and weighed and did good things because he could rejuvenate, rehydrate himself at a higher weight class. But the 130-pound version of Jose Pedraza was already on his way out, and we know that in hindsight. I knew that at that time, but everybody else can know that in hindsight. I think the Frank Martin win was an impressive win, and it was a win that I was very impressed with because of the way he went and got it. He pressed Martin mentally, and then he knocked him out physically. And you can see the way he knocked him out. That's a bona fide lightweight. The way he knocked him out was for real, you know.
A big lightweight.
But you know that's where you look at a knockout and you say he does belong on this list, or at least in the top 5, top 7 big punchers, right? But bro, you're putting out featherweights out cold, and at that point. Featherweight's out cold. Santa Cruz was a guy who turned pro at bantamweight. You know, you're knocking out guys who turn pro at bantamweight. You're knocking them out cold. You know, you're fighting ex 130-pound champions. You're fighting actually current 130-pound champions. You're doing it again now. So it's very difficult to really say where the power is. You can definitely see the power is there. But does he believe the power belongs where we're trying to put it, right? Because if he did, he'd be taking the Mike Tyson effect, where you're just fighting everybody in the weight class and seeing what happens, right? This guy's not too tall for you. This guy's not too big for you. You just take them all on. I don't see that. So for that reason, it leaves a question mark in my head. And I still don't see that, as we saw who he's signing to fight his next fight.
ジャーボンテイ・デイビス選手がレオ・サンタクルス選手から奪ったダウンは衝撃的で、やはり彼が見せるノックアウトシーンは印象に残りますね。一方で、ここではポーリー氏がデイビスのパワーを認めつつも、彼がこれまで戦ってきた相手の階級について指摘しています。前回戦ったフランク・マーティン選手はライト級でしたが、次に対戦するとされているラモン・ローチ・ジュニア選手はスーパーフェザー級の選手です。そして、この動画を作っている途中で偶然見つけたのですが、ボクシングシーンの記事によると、この2人の試合が3月1日に延期されたようです。当初は12月に予定されており、その後1月開催とも報じられていましたが、現在は3月1日に変更されたようです。また、試合会場として予定されていたヒューストンのトヨタセンターは、その日にバスケットボールの試合があるため使用できないとのことで、会場はまだ未定だそうです。
So obviously, you know, when you have in comparison other guys on this weight class that I believe, not in this weight class, other guys on this list who we may be talking about, who I believe have constantly looked to fight the best and actually have not had the profile he's had, and maybe have been able to have guys avoid them. See, people won't avoid Gervonta Davis because he brings a lot of money to the table. If he wants to fight somebody, he will. But there's other guys who are monster punchers and have existed even before, like Golovkin, for example. We have a hard time getting the big fights because nobody wants to touch them. They're such powerful punchers, but they don't have as big of a profile yet. Gervonta Davis has that profile, so he has the chance to live up to it. There are guys that do that. He's not one of them. He belongs on the list somewhere, but I'm not sure if he's in the top 5.
All right, well, we got a lot of names to get through. We spent a lot of time with Gervonta Davis. I'm going to go right back to you, Paul. You talk about the comment section. Canelo Alvarez. Now, you, of course, have been critical about his opponent's selection, not taking on the best at 168 pounds. Benavidez is the name that comes up most. Do you agree that he belongs on a list of power punchers? Yes or no, Paulie?
No, dude. He hasn't had a knockout in ages. What are we doing here? This is just what I'm saying. This is like the groupie thing. Everybody jumps in. We got a list of groupies. Let's just do the show with us. Stop letting the groupies in the thing just. Why are we even on this list? He hasn't had a knockout since last leap year, and he's he's a solid puncher. All right, he's talented. What do you want me to tell you? All right, he can punch a little bit, but does he belong in the top 5 biggest punchers in boxing? What are we kidding each other? Joke? I was curious if this guy would wind up on the list. I'm baffled right now. Actually, nothing should baffle me anymore with the amount of groupies that are in the media and fan bases at this point. But yeah, he's on the list. No, I don't think he belongs on the list. And yes, he's been a good puncher throughout his career to a degree, but not a top 5 biggest puncher in the sport guy.
Now, Chris, as Paulie points out, he hasn't had a knockout in a while, but you look at the Munguia fight, you look at the Berlanga fight, they did feel his power.
His chin more than his power.
Right, but this idea that the guys do feel his power and back up a bit. He still has power in his punches. Chris, what's your thought on it?
I'm pushing back on Paulie. I think the guy hits hard.
Nobody says he doesn't hit hard. It's in the top five.
That's the top
five best, biggest punches in the sport list.
But wait. No. Let me give my reasons. Let me give my reasons. One, I've been in the ring with him. I sparred him 10, 12 years ago when he was 20 years old. But the guy can punch, and the fact that he's okay, the knockouts are not coming anymore because there's a different thing between big puncher and finisher. You don't necessarily, one necessarily means you're the other. There are guys who can punch really hard but aren't great finishers, and there's vice versa. There are guys who are great finishers who aren't the best punchers in the world. I think one punch power, Canelo Alvarez has got it, man. I think he was back-to-back knockout of the years back in 2016, 2015, something. Back-to-back knockout of the year winner. That's something, man.
サウル・カネロ・アルバレスとジェームス・カークランドの試合は2015年5月9日に行われました。当時のカネロの戦績は44勝1敗分け、31KO。唯一の敗北はフロイド・メイウェザー・ジュニアとの試合でした。一方、カークランドの戦績は32勝1敗、28KO で、その唯一の敗北は2011年に石田信博との試合で喫したものです。カークランドは才能豊かな選手でしたが、私生活では刑務所への収監歴があり、その影響でキャリアを十分に活かすことができませんでした。試合では、カネロがカークランドを3ラウンドで圧倒的な KO 勝利で下し、観衆を沸かせました。この試合は、その年のノックアウト・オブ・ザ・イヤーに選ばれ、カネロのキャリアの中でも印象的な勝利の一つとして語り継がれています。アミール・カーンは、2004年アテネオリンピックの銀メダリストで、プロ入り後はスーパーライト級王者として成功を収めました。カネロとの試合時点での戦績は31勝3敗、19KO。一方、カネロは46勝1敗分け、32KO で、カネロは直前の試合でミゲール・コットを判定で下し、WBC 世界ミドル級タイトルを獲得しています。試合は155ポンドのキャッチウェイトで行われましたが、カーンは通常ウェルター級147ポンドで戦っており、体格差が懸念されていました。試合では、カーンが持ち前のスピードを生かして序盤で善戦しましたが、6ラウンドでカネロの強烈な右ストレートを受け、リングに沈みました。この一撃は、2016年のノックアウト・オブ・ザ・イヤーに選ばれるなど、カネロのパワーを象徴する一戦として、ボクシングファンの記憶に残っています。
Yes, Kirkland and Khan back-to-back years. I think it was 15 and 16. I could be wrong on the dates, but regardless, that's something. And those are like highlight ridiculous knockouts against good fighters. Granted, Khan's super small compared to Canelo, but now even Canelo, you look at where he's at. He's fighting at 68. The dude's not a 68-pounder. He started at 150 pounds. He's 5'8.5". He's Kovalev at 175.
But that's the thing. He hasn't had knockouts. We're talking about the five biggest punches in the sport right now.
Because he's 34 going on 58.
You're going to put in so you're putting a guy who hasn't had knockouts on the top five biggest punches in the sport. Well, in other words, you condone that kind of stuff.
We got a list of a lot of good fighters.
All right, gentlemen.
In other words, you condone that
Again,
kind
I'm
of
not
stuff.
putting Canelo at the top. I'm nowhere near the top, but especially this list.
Okay, but Teddy, let me throw it to you.
Isn't that King Cole over here, right?
Bivol said that Canelo hit harder than Beterbiev. So Bivol says that Canelo hit harder. Teddy, what's your thought on it?
Oh, when a fighter says it, look. You at the end of the day, you're getting it from a guy right after a fight. I mean, Paulie and Chris are the right guys to answer on or expound on what I'm about to say. They really are, because they've been there, they've done it. Where you're in that ring, and everything is flowing the way it's flowing, and you just fought a historic fight, you know. You unified the title for the first time in 25 years, undisputed fight, just a super hype fight, a tough fight, a really good fight. And you ask a question like that, I'd rather get the question asked to him a week later. I'm not saying it's not an accurate answer from him, from his heart and his mind. Teddy. I'm saying it's from the heart and the mind of a guy who just fought a historic fight. You know what I mean?
Teddy,
am I wrong, Paulie? Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong, because two things can be right at the same time. One thing I was saying after the fight, and why I thought Bivol won the fight, is because 75% of Beterbiev's punches were taps. He was probing. So while Canelo didn't throw that many punches against Bivol, but when he threw them, he was whipping hard shots in there. So two things can be right at the same time. Beterbiev can be a harder puncher than Canelo, but at the same time, Bivol may have felt Canelo's power more than Beterbiev. But that's why I also thought Beterbiev lost the fight, because he's tapping most of the time. He wasn't even putting anything on the shots. People just assume he was putting things on the shots because of his knockout record. But if you look at the fight, Beterbiev's punching like this.
これから流すのはベテルビエフ戦後のビボル選手のインタビューです。
So, how did his punch feel? I'm curious. Like when he landed a first good punch, like what'd you think?
Just hard punch, nothing else. He's not about he has heavy punch and it's very dangerous. No, he's about how strong he is, and he's not only one punch. When he's trying to punching combinations, all punches in the combinations are heavy. It's not. I could compare like with the Canelo. He put all his energy, all his power on single punch. And maybe single punch sometimes he's harder, Canelo, than Beterbiev.
No way.
Because Beterbiev didn't do like Beterbiev was more like close and compact. Compact.
Tight guard.
But if you ask them, let's do like 5 punches, Beterbiev, every punch will be hard. With Canelo, maybe first hard and then not. Both of them are strong, but Beterbiev is bigger and he born strong.
He's just physically a bigger guy. But wow, so you felt Canelo actually was a little, just one punch, a little more, like you felt it more.
Yeah, because Canelo, to land his punch, he was doing like from the distance, he was trying to put all his energy on. Beterbiev is not doing this in the ring. But if we ask him to do it, maybe his punch is harder, but he's not using it.
It's crazy because Canelo's a little guy, little 168. It just shows you like Canelo, it's a strong guy too. But obviously there's weight classes, there's different,
Yeah, and I told you about the strategy of them, Beterbiev is not trying to land hardest punch with full of his power, but Canelo is trying.
このビボル選手のインタビューは話題を呼び、カネロの方がベテルビエフよりもパンチ力があったというようなタイトルの動画や記事が出回りました。おそらく読者や視聴者を引き込むためにそのようなタイトルが付けられたのでしょう。しかし、その結果、タイトルだけを見た人に誤解を与えてしまった可能性もあると思います。このインタビューでビボル選手が伝えたかったのは、カネロ選手は振りかぶってパンチを打つため最初の一発は強烈ですが、その後のパンチはそれほどでもないという点です。一方で、ベテルビエフ選手はコンパクトにパンチを打ち、その一発一発が重いということです。振りかぶってパンチを打てば、小柄なカネロ選手でもベテルビエフ選手より強いパンチを放つことができるのは想像に難くありません。動画や記事の内容をしっかり確認し、二人のボクシングスタイルを知っていれば、驚くようなことではないですよね。
Of Canelo is that he's a good puncher. He drops guys. He's a select puncher. He's a specific puncher. He throws accurate punches. He lands clean, so he has effect. Clean, accurate punches. Chris made a great point. He's really he hasn't been a finisher recently, but he's a guy that when he dropped Munguia, beautiful, clean uppercut. When he dropped in his last fight,
Berlanga.
Berlanga. Beautiful timed left hook. Beautiful timed hook. Berlanga threw a right hand, left it out there, just a split second to right. He felt the hole with a short left hook. Why am I differentiating and just saying he's just a huge punch? What I'm saying is that he's a good puncher, but he's a clean, accurate. He hits you timed, clean, accurate punches. That expounds on the power. That magnifies. When you hit a guy clean, how many times have we heard in the sport called the sweet science, where anyone who catches a guy clean, even if he wasn't known as a huge puncher, can hurt the guy. I'm not saying Canelo's not a good puncher. He is. He's a real good, but I'm a little with Paulie. He's a real good, solid puncher. And I know the bows and arrows are coming out already from the Canelo maniacs and everything else. But please, calm down. He's a really good puncher. But what I'm saying that differentiates it from a guy that just has that natural power that just puts the lights right out, that don't even have to finish a guy like Tyson used to be. Those kind of guys, Ernie Shavers was. Those kind of guys, Joe Louis was. What I'm saying is he fits into a category where he gets credit for knockdowns. He deserves it. But he gets knockdowns because he times guys perfectly, because his experience helps him, where he's calm enough in an uncommon environment where he can time you perfectly with one good shot, has the power to drive, but it's the timing. It's the ability to catch a guy cleaner than the average guy. He catches guys cleaner than most fighters. So I'm going to give him credit for that. I'm going to put a little check, a little something extra for all the fans out there that want to go after me. No, he might not be the greatest puncher in the list, but he's a guy that lands as clean as any of the punchers, and that's why he has the effect and has the knockdowns. Is that? I hope that's okay.
I'm not giving any check marks at all. I'm not giving. This list is your top 5 biggest punchers in the sport.
This
now,
is great.
Based on the first 2 names that we've come up with, I'm going to change the name of the list myself because I'm understanding what it's become. This was supposed to be the 5 biggest punchers in the sport. This is actually your 5 favorite punchers in the sport. Thank you, because that's what it's actually. I can tell now.
All right, so Chris, let me ask you, Vergil Ortiz, what category does he belong in? Hard puncher or favorite puncher? You know when you have 22 wins, 21 knockouts, you got power in your hands. What's your thought on Ortiz and where he belongs?
So I'm not going to have Vergil that high in this list either because I have to see him more at 54. At 47, he was mowing guys down. And he's not a single punch guy. He's not a one-punch knockout artist. He breaks you down. He busts you up. His technique is fantastic. And he's vicious. He's mean. He goes after guys. He is what I consider a finisher, not necessarily a puncher. Yes, he can punch. Yes, he's strong. At 47, much more so than he is at 54. I got to see him more at 54. I actually think he's going to be more of a boxer at these higher weight classes from what I saw in that last fight with Bohocek. But he is a guy, it's perfect that he came up next because he is what I consider a finisher. When he hurts you, he goes for it, and he throws a ton of combinations, a ton of punches, very, very busy guy. He's trying to get the finish, but I wouldn't have him that high either as a one-punch guy.
Paul, your thought, incredibly high percentage, but as Chris said, going up in weight class. What's your thought on Vergil Ortiz on this list?
Dude, Canelo went up a weight class, got no knockouts, and now we put him on the list. Of course Vergil Ortiz belongs on the list.
Canelo's in his 5th weight class.
Vergil Ortiz belongs on this list. He belongs on this list.
I didn't say anyone doesn't belong on this. He's just not that high.
But when you, and then one reason I'll have it, he wants all the smoke. He goes for all the toughest fights. He chases them. He was gonna fight Tim Tszyu. He ended up fighting Bohocek instead. He wants all the tough fights. That goes to show me that not only you're a puncher, but you believe in your power. That's why I like guys like this. You know your power can get you out of these fights. And yeah, he didn't win the fight by knockout against Bohocek. It could have actually went either way. Both guys were huge punchers. But you know what? You separate the men from the boys when you actually take on the tough competition. We can all fight Uber guys to bring the pizza after the show and get paid our knockout record, and then we can wind up on this list. But when you're willing to actually put it on the line against other monsters, and you can live up to that hype, and Vergil so far is continuing to live up to the hype, we'll see how far he goes. But as of this moment right now, Vergil Ortiz absolutely belongs on this list.
Emphatically, Paulie Malignaggi putting him on the list. Teddy, is he on yours?
He's on my list as tremendous body puncher. That's his forte. That's his expertise. He finds the spot to the body, and he's dedicated to it. Like Paulie said, he's dedicated to get knockouts. He's dedicated to destroy your body. And for me, he's one of the top body punchers. I disagree. I disagree a little bit here with Paulie as far as his resume. I don't see. He stepped up in his last fight. I give all the credit with Bohocek, and he didn't get a knockout. And I just think when he was going through guys at welterweight, and then of course he's moved up, so you have to take that into allowance. You have to take that into consideration, which both of the champions did. He's moved up, but even at welterweight, he wasn't blowing through top names. He wasn't, beating guys or knocking guys silly that were guys that really would stand out on my list, where it would get my attention and say, wow, that guy's gotten the distance with everyone, and that guy has shown me a great chin, and that guy has shown me the ability to last rounds, and he got rid of him. I didn't see that. Look, I know he's got power. I think the greatest thing about Ortiz is his ferociousness, his dedication to getting to you. I think that he could have one of the names from the guys back in the 50s that, like the guys that fought Patterson, Hurricane Jackson or something like that, where he's a hurricane, where he's looking to blow you out of there, where his intent is to get rid, to use the moniker of the Mike Tyson. He throws with bad intentions. He makes it clear what he's looking to do, not win a decision, get a knockout. And that matters. That attitude does matter, that you're throwing those kind of punches, in a regular, consistent manner. You're not just throwing, like Paulie said, tip-tap punches, trying to set something up like Bevo does. That's Bevo's thing. That's Bevo's makeup. But Ortiz separates himself as he makes it clear, I am not going in the ring to get a decision. I'm looking to knock you out every round. I thought he stepped up with Bohocek in his last fight. I thought that showed that he's not on the top of the list for me. He's a good puncher, but in the way I described it, I didn't think his resume was the kind of resume that makes me put him on the top.
All right, well, let's talk about resumes. Paulie, when it comes to Terence Crawford, no resume right now in boxing is better. Not necessarily known, I think, to your casual fan as a puncher, but a lot of knockouts against top-quality opposition. What do you think of him on the list?
What do you mean, what do you think of him on the list? Is this a puncher's list, or we're just naming popular guys on the list? This is who the next guy's on the list is Terence Crawford?
Terence Crawford is next on the list. I'm looking at it right now. 41 wins, 31 knockouts.
Bro, did I get the memo correctly? The biggest punchers in boxing? Did I get the right memo? Go ahead.
Rod Sterling coming in from the Twilight Zone.
トワイライトゾーンは1959年から放送されたアメリカのテレビシリーズであり、ロッド・サーリングがそのクリエイター、司会、そして多くのエピソードの脚本を担当しました。あなたは想像力という鍵でこの扉を開ける。その向こうには別次元が広がっているというようなセリフが番組のオープニングにあるように、この番組は視聴者を別の次元に引き込むことをコンセプトとしています。ここでテディがこの番組のことを持ち出したのは、彼自身も話の趣旨がずれていることに気づき、クロフォードがリストに入ることに対して疑問を呈したかったからだと思います。
Hold on. What? You're about to enter into another dimension.
So not on your list,
I feel like
Paulie.
that's where I am.
So not on your list.
No, he's not on my list. Of course he's not on my list. And yes, he ran through a bunch of welterweights. I think he had like 11, 12 straight knockouts. But come on, dude. Like, really? With the top five? Top five? No. Chris, you go. I can't do this anymore.
Chris,
I'm going to take my mic off the show right now.
So I'm trying to get the criteria down while we're doing this. I'm maneuvering through all of this. So in terms of what we've been talking about, how this is going. So Crawford is basically the opposite of Gervonta Davis.
Right.
Crawford's reason for being here is based solely on his credentials, his opponents, the fact that he's been had a crazy knockout streak.
The list is not best resume. The list is biggest punchers.
I'm noticing that criteria is changing as we go.
Yeah,
So I'm trying to stay relevant. So if Crawford's here, then you got a guy who has been, so destructive. Every fight at 47 was a KO. That was up until his last fight, the highest weight class he'd ever been. And he was beating good guys, knocking out good guys, and that means something. And in terms of being a pure puncher, he's not. He's a boxer puncher. He sets things up. Teddy, as you mentioned about Canelo, his precision, his timing, his ability to sense things in the ring make him a very, very dangerous guy. Where really he can hurt you at any time. And also the switching sides, being equally strong with both hands, being able to hurt you with the left, being able to hurt you with the right. Knocking out Kell Brook with a right jab over his jab, that was very impressive. So yeah, in terms of criteria that we're talking about, the guy's resume speaks for itself.
And he combines, he combines all the things that make you an effective fighter and an effective puncher too. Technique, delivery system, calmness, eyes, timing. He's got as good a timing as anybody. And he's got great eyes where he'll catch somebody, as we talked about, or I touched on Canelo, with a clean punch that somebody else is going to brush off the side instead of hitting him clean, impacting on the chin. He's going to hit him cleaner because of that timing, because of that vision, because of that package. It's not based purely on power. It's based on all of those things. And I don't think, where I'm a little different, we should take credit away from him because he has all those things working for him. And we shouldn't forget how many weight classes he's gone up. I mean, this guy started at what's it, lightweight? He went to junior welterweight. Then he went to welterweight. Now he's at junior middleweight. So I think this is a guy that does have power, showed it in the lighter weights, a little less now in the heavyweight, especially in his last fight with a 154-pound. He just got to that weight class. But it's a guy that we shouldn't take him off. We shouldn't discount him because he combines the power with all those other expertises, with all those other talents, all those other abilities of good eyes, good timing, fast hands, great technique. I think he belongs, not at the top, but I don't think we should in any way dismiss him in any way because of the things I said, because he's also known for having all those other qualities. I think he fits. He's got all those qualities and he's got pop. All right?
Well, I want to stick with you as the heavyweight coach. You coached Mike Tyson. Of course, your mentor, Customato, his demon was Sonny Liston, of course. This idea, Daniel Dubois, our only heavyweight on this list, 22 professional wins, 21 by knockout. When you look at the heavyweights, Teddy, that you've been around, how do you rate his power?
Great. This guy, there's different body types, there's different muscularity. You got the wiry guys, the Tommy Hearns, the Aguayos, the Bob Fosters, those wiry guys that get leverage, they get torque. They just, it's like a slingshot, and they knock you out. And then you got the guys like him, heavy bone, thick bone. I've seen that mostly over the years with certain people from certain parts of the world, like the Samoans. David Tua. He's a David Tua type, where you got those thick bones, that thick mass. Tua could punch like hell. I know it was mostly only with the left hook for the most part, but the thickness, the bone density made those guys just naturally powerful. He's one of those guys that doesn't go into a gym to get his physique. He's one of those guys that it's attached to genetics. And when it's attached to genetics in that kind of way, as I talked about it, just being that kind of thick guy, that is the kind of power that is, it's a son of a gun. I mean, anything he hits your arm, he hits your elbow, it's going to hurt. It's going to be impactful. Just simply for the way I described it, that he's got thicker bones. I'm not trying to be a internalist as a doctor here, but I've been around the sport where I've seen it. And you put your hands on him, you feel it. And then when he puts his hands on somebody else, they feel it. Yeah, this guy's destructive. He's dangerous.
All right, now I want to be careful. Paulie, don't rip your mic off and run away. You can agree that Daniel Dubois is a hard puncher, yeah? He belongs on this list, yes?
I agree. Everybody we've mentioned is a hard puncher, but this list is your top 5 hardest punchers.
Is Dubois in it?
None of the guys that I said are in the top 5 shouldn't be in the top 5 are not hard punchers. We're talking about your 5 best punchers.
Right.
Dubois is not in it for me, but I agree with Teddy in that he is a hard puncher. But when we stepped up Dubois against Joyce went like 10, 11 rounds, right? How many rounds was that fight? And there was never a place where Joyce was in trouble. Like, you fight a guy who hits that hard, the guy has to barely touch you, and you're in trouble at least at some point, even if you got to beat him. You've got to completely shut him out the way Lennox shut out David Tua, where he didn't let him land basically anything. You know what I mean? A guy who punches like that, you've got to keep him completely controlled. It ain't like Dubois didn't have decent moments in the Joyce fight, but where did Joyce go? Joyce didn't go nowhere. You know what I mean? Then the Usyk fight, I don't know. I didn't see no big puncher. I see a guy who can punch.
Think he was the
He
same
can punch.
guy
He's
yet,
definitely a hard
Paulie.
puncher.
Well, when you look at the heavyweight division, let's go back down the scale. Naoya Inoue, the monster. We know about his boxing ability and his power. Chris, let me start with you. I know you're a big fan. Where's he on your list of punchers?
Here we go. Now we're talking real punches. This
All
guy
Thank you.
is
That's what I've been telling you.
He's a monster for a reason. This guy is close to number one on the list. He's way up there. Not only is he fundamentally sound, not only does he have the God-given gift of a one-punch power, not only is he a good body puncher, he's a good finisher. He's a puncher and a finisher. He's put together. He is a boxer-puncher who looks to knock you out every single round, every fight. This guy, I can't say enough. I'll let these guys talk about it.
Paulie?
Now we're at a whole different level.
Are we agreed, Paulie? Are you in?
Yeah, we agree.
Naoya
Of course
Inoue,
we agree.
please.
Of course we agree. Well, that's why I got scared, because at Dubois we were at 5, and I'm like, that's it? That's the list? We're not going to have Inoue on this list where we had him on minds? I was very disappointed for a few minutes, you know? Naoya Inoue is bad intentions, like Teddy says, one-punch knockout power, destructive, can fight, and wants all the smoke. I think it's very important to be on this list. You got to want all the smoke. You got to want all the best fighters and in your weight class that you're in or whatever weight class you land in.
Right? 4?
Yeah, and he's constantly chasing the best guys. He doesn't look at guys and say, all right, I went into this weight class, but this guy's too big for this weight class. Let's get the small. He just wants all the smoke. That's what makes him belong on this list, because he wants all the smoke and he continues to knock them all out, dude. That's a guy who belongs on this list. That's it.
Teddy, where do you put him? What's your thought on the monster Inoue?
He's a legitimate monster. He's got the right nickname. He earns that nickname. He earns the right to carry that nickname. Some people don't. He does. He's a monster in every way that Chris and Paulie say. Every way, technically, mentally, emotionally. You know, he could go get you. He could box. He could counterpunch. He's a great body puncher. And don't forget, I don't think we forgot, but don't forget how many weight classes this guy's gone up. And don't forget how quickly he fought to this level and how he didn't take time fighting, you know, as Paulie would say, the Uber drivers. I mean, he was fighting good fighters out of the box. He was winning titles with like 4, 5, 6 fights and then moving up in weight classes and winning more titles with 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever he's at now, fights. I mean, this guy, you got to be special to do it the way he's done it at all different weights so fast. And again, the repertoire, he can choose any way he wants to go about getting rid of you. And he does.
When you look at it, there's one guy who hasn't changed a lot of weight classes, but he's a great puncher, Artur Beterbiev. Chris, I got to start with you again. What's your thought on Beterbiev on this list? Where do you put him?
Now, he's another one. God-given power, physically strong, great endurance, technically sound, super technical in the way he lands his shots, sets things up, a great intuition. And just, I mean, I tell this story over and over again. I probably sound like a broken record for the the Vosdick fight. Sitting in that fighter meeting and looking at this guy's hands, looking at the sinews and the muscles and the veins. He just looks like he's made out of something different. So I know guys like that. I fought Ruslan Provatnikov. His body was made out of iron. It was just a different thing. He's like a different cut out of a different cloth.
ルスランプロ・ボトニコフはロシア出身の元プロボクサーで。激しい打ち合いやタフなファイトスタイルで知られています。特にスーパーライト級やウェルター級で活躍し、力強いパンチと打たれ強さでファンを魅了しました。その戦い方からシベリアンロッキーというニックネームでも呼ばれていました。2013年3月、プロボドニコフはティモシー・ブラッドリーとの試合で一気に注目を浴びます。この試合は激戦となり、判定で敗れたものの、ファイト・オブ・ザ・イヤーに選ばれ、彼のタフさと闘志が称賛されました。その後、同年10月に WBO スーパーライト級のタイトルを獲得し、一時は世界王者としての地位を築きました。 しかし防衛には至らず、その後タイトルを失います。また、彼と戦ったクリス・アルジェリですが、僅差で勝利を得たものの、その目の腫れ方がプロボドニコフの攻撃の破壊力を物語っています。2016年の試合で敗北を喫した後、引退を表明しましたが、その激しいファイトスタイルは、今でもファンの記憶に残っています。
And Beterbiev is that kind of guy. And he's got the delivery system. The guy has very good technique. He's very smart. We saw how tactical he can be in that fight against Bivol. So you put all that together, and I mean, it's really between Inoue and Beterbiev. I'm leaning Inoue because of the more weight classes, but it's really hard to look at Beterbiev and be like, that's not the best puncher in the world.
What do you think, Paulie? Would be number one on your list?
No, Inoue was number one on my list. This guy was number two, though. But yeah, same thing. I agree with Pritz wholeheartedly. Now we're getting to the names that actually make me feel like I don't have to wash myself in the shower after getting done with this list. I was feeling dirty for a second when we first started talking about some of these names. But now I feel clean again, you know? I feel like these are the pure punchers. These are the guys that belong on this list. Beterbiev is the guy who is basically, he's like the guy in the cartoons, when the Looney Tunes cartoons, I know I'm aging myself, when you get hit on the head and you just see stars, you know, you still...
ルーニー・テューンズはアメリカのワーナーブラザーズによって制作されたアニメで、映画館で映画が始まる前に上映マナーを教える寸劇に登場する、人型のウサギや黒いアヒルを見たことがある方も多いのではないでしょうか。こうした寸劇では、キャラクターが叩かれて頭の周りに星が回るシーンがよくあり、その表現を使ってベテルビエフのパンチ力を比喩的に語っています。
Tweety birds flying around your eyes,
yeah. Because he doesn't have that snap. I think it was Ted that brought it up before, that snap that puts your lights out. He's like a clubber. He's like a George Foreman way. He hits you and you wish you were out of your misery, but you're not. So you're either gonna quit or you're just gonna get beaten into submission. You know, and because he just clubs you and he leaves you seeing stars, but he doesn't put you out of your misery because he doesn't have that snap. I'll say it again. Dude, scary. Sometimes you wish guys would just have that snap and put you out of your misery, I guess.
Teddy, is he the definition of, you said, born not made? This guy's a born puncher, Beterbiev. What's your thought?
No, he is. I mean, his bone structure, everything we touched on already. What Chris touched on. The guy, you touch the guy, he feels like steel. I mean, he's like an android. It's like there's something that's almost not, even you look at his head. I mean, there's something that's different about him. You know, I mean, you look at the drills that he does. I would find you hard pressed to show me anyone else that does the drills with on his knuckles, on his fingers, then on his wrist, and then push-ups with then on his forearms.
ベテルビエフ選手のこの腕立て伏せは有名ですよね。しかし、ビボル選手も同様のトレーニングを行っている映像があります。ロシアではこのトレーニングを取り入れている選手が多いのでしょうか。この映像を見る限り、ベテルビエフ選手は両足も浮かせて弾ませているのに対し、ビボル選手は足を地面につけたままで行っています。そのため、ベテルビエフ選手の方がより高い負荷をかけているように見えます。
I mean, everything is, again, it's like it's made out of molten steel. He is a guy that the old timers would say, I love the old timers sayings. They used to say, Teddy, this guy hit you on top of the head and he'll fracture your ankles. I mean, you know, I mean, he hurts you. Okay, that's the best way I can say. Any way he hits you, you know, there was mythical stories about Rocky Marciano, great puncher, a bludgeoning puncher. Another one, like me and Paulie, Chris talk about, not as snappy, but bludgeoning, where the thing about Marciano that was always talked about was that he could hit you on your forearms, hit you on your elbows, break your blood vessels, drop your arms, you know, crack a rib. I mean, he was doing damage in a different kind of way, in that bludgeoning way. That's him. He just hurts when he hits you. It just hurts. And when you go home, there's bruises there. He's that kind of puncher.
That is the best kind of knockout puncher, no matter where it comes from, no matter where it lands. It's going to hurt every time. Appreciate you, champs, and Teddy for joining us. Remember this weekend, of course, Tim Tszyu versus Murtaza Aliyev title fight. Our interview with him is up on our ProBox TV YouTube channel. Also, Wednesday night fights coming at you from Plant City.